Stop now, breathe, and look with sincere honesty inside yourself. Could it be that what you're feeling, that unexplained fatigue, that silent apathy, that sensation of walking without moving forward, isn't your body screaming for rest, but your soul begging to be heard? What if you're slowly killing your own soul without even realizing it? It's intense, I know. But this is what we need to talk about. James Hillman said we live in a culture that has forgotten the soul. A culture that trades depth for function, that values what's efficient, fast, practical, but despises what's symbolic, slow, and mysterious. And that's how day after day, without intention, without malice, we extinguish our inner flame. We suffocate the soul, which only wants to breathe. Have you ever felt like you're living on autopilot? That you wake up, complete tasks, fake smiles, do what's expected, but nothing seems to truly touch you? This isn't just stress. This might be the clearest sign that your soul is losing its place in your life. And don't be fooled. The soul doesn't vanish suddenly. It dies slowly. It dies when you stop imagining. When you stop listening to that silence that comes from within. When you no longer write, no longer dream, no longer allow yourself to make mistakes, to feel, or to contemplate. It dies every time you choose efficiency over authenticity. Every time you swallow your tears to keep up appearances, suppress a desire for fear of judgment, or abandon a passion because you think it serves no purpose. But who said everything needs to serve a purpose? Hillman reminds us that the soul isn't concerned with utility. It's interested in depth. It wants beauty, not function. It wants metaphor, not explanation. It wants the strange, the contradictory, what doesn't fit in boxes. And if you feel you're drying up inside, perhaps you don't need a solution. Perhaps you just need to relearn how to look, to listen, to marvel. The soul thrives on what the modern world calls useless: art, poetry, silence, contemplation, dreams, reverie, doubt, memory. This is where it flourishes. And when all this is pushed aside, replaced by hurry, productivity, and performance, the soul quietly withdraws. It doesn't fight. It doesn't throw tantrums. It simply drifts away. And you forget who you are. Do you feel this? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't know how to name it. But if some part of you still pulses with that subtle discomfort, that longing for something you can't even identify, then yes, your soul is trying to speak. It wants to return. And it needs space. It needs to be heard. It needs you to stop now and ask with honesty, what am I killing within myself when I choose merely to survive? Have you noticed how everything around us is always trying to fix things? If you're sad, they tell you to snap out of it. If you're afraid, they tell you to be strong. If you're tired, they tell you to grab a coffee, smile, pretend everything's fine. But what if the soul doesn't want you to fix anything? What if, instead, it only wants you to listen? James Hillman taught us that the soul doesn't speak in logical language. It speaks through images, through metaphors, through symbols, through emotions you don't always understand but feel deeply. The soul wants you to descend, not ascend. It wants immersion, not ladders. It wants you to embrace what you feel without trying to fix or justify. It wants you to give up finding immediate answers and begin, finally, to cultivate meaning. When the soul is wounded, it doesn't need a diagnosis. It needs poetry. It needs you to observe your dreams like someone listening to an old song. It needs you to remember who you were before you tried to fit in. It needs you to stop trying to win and simply allow yourself to feel. But this, of course, requires courage, because there's a part of us, trained over years, that believes everything must have a rational purpose. You look at emptiness and immediately want to fill it. You feel a knot in your chest and want to cut it out. But the soul wants you to stay with that knot, to listen to what it has to say. Hillman said our symptoms are metaphors, that depression, anxiety, insomnia can be symbolic cries from the soul asking us to shift life's focus. And perhaps healing isn't the disappearance of pain, but the emergence of a new perspective. Have you ever thought about that? Maybe your anguish isn't something to eliminate, but a call to live with greater depth. Maybe your emptiness doesn't need to be filled with things, but understood as a fertile space where something more genuine can grow. But for this, you need to slow down. You need to allow yourself not to be in control all the time. You need to sit with yourself and ask, what are these images dwelling inside me trying to tell me? Look at your dreams, at the symbols that appear when you're distracted, at that song that always moves you without knowing why. These small signs aren't foolishness. They're traces of the soul trying to return, and it only returns if it's welcomed. So today, instead of running, ask yourself, what image lives within me that I'm afraid to look at? What part of myself am I ignoring in the name of efficiency? The soul wants images, it wants space. It wants you to see meaning where the world only sees function. What if everything you've called failure was actually a way of returning to yourself? What if that pain you've avoided for so long was the exact place where your soul resides? James Hillman teaches us something essential and very uncomfortable. The soul doesn't develop through overcoming, but through diving in. While the world asks you to evolve, improve, advance, the soul only wants you to deepen. It doesn't want you to conquer fear. It wants you to hear what fear is saying. It doesn't want you to eliminate sadness. It wants you to recognize its beauty and what it holds. Transformation for the soul doesn't happen by climbing mountains. It happens by descending into the basement, where the pieces of you that were left behind reside. The silenced child, the forgotten desire, the abandoned art, the dream that didn't materialize but never stopped living inside you. Can you remember something that once moved you deeply, but that you buried in the name of practicality? Know this, that memory still breathes within you, and the soul is there. It lives in the places you reject. It dwells in what you no longer want to remember. Hillman said we're inhabited by internal figures, psychic images that speak to us constantly. But how can we listen if we're always busy trying to appear strong? The soul doesn't want performance. It wants truth, even if it hurts. Because in pain dwells the real. In loss dwells value. In silence dwells listening. Sometimes the soul gets sick because you stopped dancing, because you stopped writing, stopped dreaming, drawing, talking to the sky, allowing yourself to fall to the ground and say, I don't know. You need to stop trying to be someone all the time and start becoming an you. But this only happens when you allow yourself to descend, and this descent, which the soul so desires, isn't into hell. It's into your most authentic interior. That's where real transformation happens. Not with goals, not with productivity tips, not with ready-made phrases, but with listening, with presence, with slowness. So now close your eyes for a moment and think, in what part of your life are you pretending? Everything is fine? What piece of you is abandoned, needing to be touched with gentleness, not with demands? The soul lives where no one else looks, and perhaps at this exact moment it's calling you to return, not to rise, but to descend, to feel, to stay. Maybe you've spent years trying to get it right, to please, to achieve, to be enough. Maybe you've adapted so much that you no longer know what's spontaneous in you. Maybe you've spent your entire life running from a pain that only wanted to be heard. But now something has changed. If you've made it this far, perhaps you've heard, even if just for moments, the whisper of the soul. And it doesn't demand great changes. It doesn't want revolutions. The soul only asks for a silent, almost secret gesture that you return. Return to listening to yourself without judgment. Return to seeing beauty where no one else does. Return to allowing yourself to feel without needing to understand everything. Because it's not about controlling life, it's about inhabiting it. Hillman said healing the soul isn't about making it function better. It's about restoring meaning to what seemed meaningless. And this meaning doesn't come from answers. It comes from images, from symbols, from silence, from connection. Perhaps your healing begins when you stop fighting against what you feel and start conversing with it. When you cease wanting to be strong and begin being honest. When you accept not knowing, but commit to listening. Because the soul doesn't want solutions. It wants intimacy. It wants you to stay with it in the darkness, to not flee when it hurts, to not suffocate it with productivity, to not abandon it through haste. And yes, this is difficult. It's difficult to stop when the entire world demands speed. It's difficult to hear the soul when everything outside screams. But this is how transformation begins, with a silence full of presence, with a small but sacred gesture listening to yourself. So today, just for today, and don't try to solve anything. Just stop, just breathe, just ask, what is my soul trying to tell me in this exact moment? And listen, even if no answer comes. Because sometimes what heals isn't the answer. It's finally asking the right question.